Trex composite decking is rot and splinter resistant. Wood is not. Trex is insect proof. Wood is not. Trex eliminates time-consuming maintenance. Wood does not. Trex comes with a 25-year fade and stain warranty. Wood does not. So here's the question. Why would you ever choose to build with wood? Make sure your next deck is built with Trex.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests like Jay Bilas on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. He'll join us in just a couple of minutes, get into all this business with Louisville and Patino and everything else. If you follow Bilas at all on any social media, you know exactly where he stands on the matter. So I'm looking forward to talking with him about that.
I am as well. And this whole golf god thing. I mean, Brad Faxon, we just had him on doing coverage for Fox.
Brad Faxon was on the tour for years. He's now the lead analyst on a major network's coverage of golf. If you're not listening to him, who are you listening to? The golf gods exist.
No, they do not.
They just do.
No, they only exist in your mind, and you let your own mind affect you. That's why you've been in therapy for decades.
But you just heard Brad Faxon agreeing.
Obviously, it's letting it affect him as well.
Here's for those of you just joining us, here's my take. You had two different players. People were criticizing Nah. I heard people acting, and I heard the interview that Faxon referenced where where Nah was interviewed after the round yesterday. And he was trying to explain it away like he had done something wrong. I didn't think he did anything wrong. He took a video throwing the ball into the fescue, and it was like, look how incredibly hard this is. He genuflected before the golf gods. And he shot a 68.
I don't know if he
was rewarded.
See, I didn't take that. I looked at him as showing everybody how difficult the grass was, not genuflecting in front of the golf.
But those were, in purpose, they were actually the same thing. They added up to the same thing. So that was genuflection in front of the golf gods, and he was rewarded. He shot a 68. Rory McIlroy spat in the face of the golf gods. He said, why would you cut down the fescue? I can't do his accent. Why would you cut down the fescue if we can't hit it in the face? This is a kid who grew up at Royal County Down, which is 1,000 times harder golf course than this is, with the same kind of fescue and much narrower fairways. And he said, well, why would they cut down this fescue? If we can't hit it in the fairway, then we don't deserve to be in there. Okay, that's spitting in the face of the golf gods. And when last seen, he was in there with a weed whacker trying to find a golf ball, and he shot like 107. So, or actually, what did he shoot, 78, 79? I mean, he got annihilated.
78, I think.
78. So that's the golf gods saying, I don't care if you're Rory McIlroy. I don't care if you've won 3 majors or whatever it is he's won and you're one of the great players. You can't talk to us that way. That's what happened.
There are just many things on this show as it finally winds down that we are just never going to agree on.
I know.
And that's going to be one of them.
It is my goal to convince you of this. Let me convince you of another one.
Better hurry, yeah.
The super team, okay? Here's the definition of a super team. A super team has nothing to do with how it ultimately succeeds or fails. That would be a super team. The Bulls of the 90s were a super team. But they weren't a super team. They weren't put together the way these were. The super teams may have started with the 1998 Rockets. They brought in, remember they brought in Barkley?
Yeah.
They brought in Pippen.
Yeah.
And they had Hakeem. And they had brought in Drexler previously. A super team to me is when they put guys together who had been in different places. The 04 Lakers, you could describe as a super team. They had Shaq, they had Kobe, they brought in Karl Malone. They brought in Gary Payton. The Boston Celtics.
40, weren't they?
They were old. They didn't win. They lost to the Pistons.
And they weren't a super team.
But they were not a super team.
They weren't a super
But they were
team,
a super team.
And they weren't a super team either.
They were.
No, they weren't.
In 2008, the Celtics, they brought in Kevin Garnett, superstar. Mm-hmm. They brought in Ray Allen, superstar. They formed a super team. They won. The Miami Heat, LeBron James, Cavalier. Chris Bosh, Raptor, went down to Miami to play with Dwayne Wade, super team. Then he came back to Cleveland. They brought in Kevin Love. That's kind of a super team. And now finally the Warriors, they win 73 games and they add Kevin Durant. That's a super team.
Right, you got to win.
Even if they'd lost, they'd have been a super team.
Nope, disagree completely. You will not convince me on that one. They put together what they wanted to be a super team, but they didn't win, so they're not a super team.
Right. They're not a super team.
And they weren't, they weren't a super team.
In this case, they did win.
No, they did win. That's exactly right.
So look, here's a story. Who wrote this? I like this. This is on FoxSports.com. 5 NBA super teams that failed to win a title. That's exactly right. My definition of it does not involve
they
the
tried to put together super teams to be a super team, and they didn't win, so they were neither.
To me, the super team, the definition of a super team is how it is put together, not how it ultimately fares. That is my definition.
That's a good, concise definition that you should have started with. You're still wrong, but it's a good, concise definition.
I'm genuinely curious, forgetting the fact that we're sort of saying this in a joking tone.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if most fans agree with me or agree with you. Does a super team have to be a super team in order to be a super team? I know it sounds like I'm trying to be funny with that, but I'm really not. I'm curious to know, do you believe that the 04 Lakers were a super team? Do you believe that the Heat, like, for example, the Heat, there were 2 years they didn't win. Guillermo, throw this on the poll. Do you have to have a space between the super and the team in order to be a super team? Does that have to be 2 words, or can it merely be one? I'm using super team as one word.
I know you are.
Kind of like superhero or Superman or superstar.
To me, you got to close the deal off. People call our defense in Philly one of the best ever, and unfortunately, we can't have that moniker because we didn't close the deal. It's a different way of looking at it.
I understand what you're saying,
about.
and I understand the comparison, but It's not actually the same thing. Here's the comparison. The Philadelphia Eagles, what was the year they added? They added Nnamdi Asomugha, and they added all that. Vince Young called them the Dream Team and all that. Remember that? Whatever year that was, they brought in all these guys, and they stunk. Mm-hmm. Remember that? Yeah. That was a super team.
No, it wasn't.
It was. It was a super team. They brought in all these superstars from all these other places. Rob, get me the list of all the players they brought in that year. Whatever it was, 5-6 years ago. You know what I'm talking about.
No, I know what you're talking about, and they called it the Dream Team.
Vince Young called it a Dream Team, which was spitting in the face of the football gods. And paid
the price for that.
Yes, and they smote him.
Yes.
And they smoked them as a result of it. The golf gods will smite you. They'll smote you.
They're smiters.
Whatever the past tense of smote is.
They will smite you.
They will smote unto thee, and thee shall be, thou shalt bow before the golf gods, or thou shalt pay the price with a smoting or a smiting or whatever the past tense of it is. You will be smote. Why are you looking at me like that? You're making me lose my own track.
I feel you're in a certain state where you smoked something.
I'm really kind of spiraling out of control here. Thank God Jay Bilas is ready to go. We are Mike and Mike. I want to play the Patino from yesterday to set this up. So yesterday, the announcement, by now I'm sure most people have heard it, happened about an hour after we went off the air. The NCAA announced what it's doing involving Louisville and Patino. They may go back and take away their championship. They are suspending Patino for the first 5 games of the ACC schedule. The school strongly rebuked that and is appealing the suspension and the rest of it. In the meantime, Rick Pitino had, among other things, this to say.
You know, for 35 some odd years, I've had a lot of faith in the NCAA and have reacted that way accordingly as a head basketball coach in the belief in their rules. I've thought in the recent past, they've made some great adjustments to the rules that have helped players along the way. I feel not like everybody here, not only is it unjust, unfair, over the top severe, but I've lost a lot of faith in the NCAA.
So that's the thoughts of Rick Pitino. Let's bring in our own Jay Bilas, and let's make this Straight Talk, which is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Good morning, Jay Bilas.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
We're doing great, and we're going to start this by just giving you the floor. Your thoughts on what happened yesterday as far as the NCAA and Louisville are concerned, and then we'll work our way more specifically. But, Jay, for those who don't follow you on social media, what was your overriding thought?
Well, there are a lot of different layers to this, Mike and Mike. You certainly have the underlying issue of what happened, and that is Andre McGee, who was the director of basketball operations, ran this scheme in the dorm with recruits and players. And, if you go by the report, there were 22 parties over a 4 or 5 year period. But the bottom line here is the NCAA investigation, the Louisville investigation, and all credible evidence points to no one had knowledge of this outside of Andre McGee. No staff member, no one else. And so the issue is one of the rules. And the NCAA put in a coach's accountability rule a few years ago that said if something happens, it is the head coach's responsibility, and they are presumed to have knowledge of it unless that presumption can be rebutted. And nobody's ever rebutted it. So it's basically an irrebuttable presumption. So Rick Pitino is going to be held accountable for this, even though all evidence shows that he had no knowledge of this whatsoever. And I don't think it's reasonable to assume that he should have known. I think you guys even said, I was listening earlier, when you said, look, this is unimaginable. And I do think that more than anything, this was a failure of imagination. When I first heard of this, I found it hard to believe. And I know Louisville did too. And after they looked into it, they found out, oh my goodness, some of this did happen. And people were taken aback. But if you know people there, as I do, it is impossible to believe that so many of the good people that worked there had knowledge of this or somehow should have known. Then you go to the case itself. As crazy as this sounds, this is basically an extra benefits case. And so, like, the NCAA is put in the odd position of having to put monetary value on these services. And so that's where it is. It's an extra benefits case and a coach accountability case. And so, and the last thing, and then I'll let you ask me questions about what I've said, is sort of the suspension. So Larry Brown got 9 games for a player getting improper academic help that the NCAA said Brown had no knowledge of. Jim Boeheim got 9 games for a player getting improper academic help that the NCAA said he had no knowledge of. So Larry Brown's suspension started at the beginning of the year. Jim Boeheim started at the start of ACC play. The NCAA Appeals Committee came in, even though the appeal was heard late and not in a timely manner, in my judgment, and said it's improper for Boeheim to be suspended at the start of ACC play. And then the Committee on Infractions turns around and does it again to another coach. And I don't understand that. I don't understand the policy behind it. I don't understand the Committee on Infractions saying somehow ACC games are more important than other games. And I don't understand any kind of policy that would say, we'll let the coach be in charge for all this time and then take him out of commission for 5 games where he's not allowed to talk to anybody associated with the university, and then we'll put him back in place after that. And so for punishing a coach for what they're saying is failure to monitor, they are taking him totally out of any monitoring of his program. That doesn't make any sense at all to me, but that's just one of these odd things in the rules and the enforcement that I just don't agree with.
Well, I mean, listen, we can. It's 2 different things. What we can debate about is the punishment, which I agree. Some of the punishment, some of the innocent that get punished out of all this, and I'm talking about the players, not the coach so much, can be ridiculous. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is just how you think it's impossible that anybody could have known about it. I think it's almost impossible that other people didn't know about it. Now, whether I say it's Rick Pitino or not, there's the plausible deniability we can use with the president an awful lot down through the years that it just doesn't get up to him for just that, plausible deniability. But and I heard you say it in the soundbite that we played before that over a number of times over 2 years, it comes out to like once a month, and you kind of said, isn't that much? I couldn't disagree more. Once or twice overall maybe isn't that much. But over a 2-year period, Jay, to think that nobody else would have any inkling or clue of what's going on, I can't even believe. And it's not like people are going to spout off, hey, they know what happened, they saw what happened. There are plenty of people that are going to lie to protect themselves or the situation in this situation. So I don't buy that. Now, whether Rick knew, as I said, getting all the way to the top, but I do understand the coach is responsible for the team, just like the school is responsible for the academic department or for the athletic department. And if one of those fails, then you go and you punish the next higher up. I get that. I understand that. We can debate the punishment, but I certainly understand saying, okay, we maybe don't think you were involved or knew of it, but you're running that program. Your stamp is on that program. Your responsibility is that program.
Yeah, the coach accountability rule is fine. I don't happen to agree with it, but it's fine. So if you want to, that's the rule. And I say we go by the rules. I understand that. We can argue about the policy of the rule.
Sure.
Now, first of all, what you said, I did not say. I said no such thing, that it wasn't that often. Like 22 times over a 4 or 5 year period is a lot. But you can name, Mike, not one red flag that someone should have seen. And tell me what the evidence you had is that other people knew or should have known.
Tell you what I'm saying is nobody said anything. What I'm saying is, you don't think in a situation like this, a number of people they talk to, nobody would lie and say, I didn't know. Nobody said anything to me. I don't know. Do we actually think that people put their hand on the Bible and tell the truth all the time? People are covering their own butts in this situation. Now,
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this was investigated fully by 2 different bodies. There were multiple investigations. The NCAA gave everyone involved in this immunity. And so now when all the players had immunity, they ratted out Andre McGee, but decided to stop there, and they all did it together. That's what's hard to believe. And look, all I'm saying is that the NCAA can point, and no one else can point to any red flag to say, well, there, he should have known. Now, I get sort of the idea that people reflexively say, if this happened, everybody should have known. I get that. There's just no evidence that they should have.
Right.
All
okay.
I'm saying is, like in every facet of life, we have people who let us down that are trusted to do their jobs. Because one issue here in this case is, what do we take from this that coaches and administrations are going to put controls in place so this kind of thing doesn't happen again, even though I don't think it's going to be a recurring issue. It's so bizarre
I agree.
that I don't think this is something that's going to be happening again. But what message do we take? So they said that Andre McGee was a peer of the players. So that indicates, if you're a reasonable person in a position of authority, we better put like 50-year-old people in charge of this stuff, because we can't have somebody saying we had a peer in charge. So we got to do that. Then do we have to have somebody watch that person do their job? So essentially we're going to have one big casino where we've got a dealer, then a pit boss, and then an eye in the sky, and all this to make sure that nobody lets us down. And then the last part of this, and this is the part that I think is really the biggest problem, is, you know, if we're going to be blaming everybody in accountability like this, where this is a multi-billion-dollar business, as you guys know. So the coaches have, let's take Pitino out. Coaches have multi-million-dollar contracts. Millions of dollars are flowing through these programs. And if they want to protect that, they're going to say, you know what? These players present risk. We have got to segregate them from the rest of the student body so that we can keep an eye on them and corral them, and including recruits and all these other things. So you're going to say with a recruit now, you know what? No recruits staying in the dorms. We're going to keep them in hotels. We're going to have security with them. We're going to do so they can't be normal students anymore.
Jay, athletes are already segregated. They have their own dorms. They have their own dining halls. They eat at their own time. They have their own study halls. It's already done. That's nothing new. That's almost the norm now in big schools.
It's not. Actually, it's not. They have regular students in these dorms. So there's a certain percentage of a quote-unquote athletic dorm that has to be regular students. Now they're hand-picked students. I get that.
Right.
Now, wait a minute. So you say that as if somehow they're picking. They're picking people that are going to sort of help them in a conspiracy. That was kind of the tone I just heard. I hope
No. I'm taking it. It's a low percentage to say you're doing it. That's all it is. If they could have just athletes in the dorms, and some places do, that they would have that.
Right.
But if there's a rule that says, we got to have.
Some places don't. They're not allowed. They're not allowed to have that. But what I'm saying is, like listen, I don't want this to devolve into something else. All I'm saying is, like what they're doing, what the incentive now is going to be, or disincentive, is to have the players as a part of the student body. They're going to be separated even further. And what I'm saying is this kind of thing is just the pendulum swinging way too far each time we do something like this. And we take it way one way, and then we're going to have a thing where they're going to say no athletic dorms and swing back the other way. Something else will happen. They'll do something else. And instead of a standard of, why don't we just do what's reasonable? and to suggest like this is not something. I don't believe this happens all the time. I have never heard of such a thing in the last in the last 25 years.
I agree.
I've been doing this.
We agree on that.
And so it's not a recurring. We don't. This is not some recurring problem where like we have to deal with academic fraud or players being paid. If Rick Pitino were walking by his parking lot for practice and saw Cadillac Escalades and big cars and Lamborghinis, he'd go, wait a minute, he should have known that his players were getting paid. This other thing, because are we going to ask coaches now, you've got to patrol the hallways of your dorms every night to make sure this doesn't happen? I don't know that that's reasonable, and I'm not saying that's the natural consequence of this ruling. But really, like when you get down to the extra benefits part, what if they were taken? What if the players did this and there were no coaches involved, and the players took recruits to gentlemen's clubs and they got free admission and sort of free services there, if you will? They have just like anything else, the NCAA's got to put a dollar figure on this stuff, and that's where we are with this. It's so bizarre as to be unimaginable, and I do not believe for 1 second that anyone other than Andre McGee at Louisville thought that this would be a good recruiting practice, and somehow Rick Pitino knew or willfully looked the other way. I do not believe that. There is not one shred of credible evidence that points in that direction, other than sort of our reflexive, well, how could you not know?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on any of you guys, but if somebody could give me one shred of credible evidence that anyone there knew, I would be the first in line, like the line on Airplane, to shake the passenger to keep him or her quiet. I'd be the first one in line, but I don't believe that for 1 second. I've read all these reports. There's not one shred of credible evidence that anyone else knew or should have known.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. I hate to ask you this on the air, Jay, but I'd love to continue this conversation. Can you hang on? Are you good for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
Excellent. Let's put Jay on hold because I have a break I have to do here, and we'll come back and continue because there's just so much here that we can continue to discuss. Mike, we're presented by Progressive Insurance. Jay Bilas will continue with us in a moment on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line right after this word from TaylorMade. Now, if there's one thing you know about me or Bilas and many others, we love golf, and all golfers are very particular about their equipment. For the last few weeks, I've been trying out the new TaylorMade golf ball, the TP5, and I've completely made the switch. It is the best golf ball on the market. The TP5 and the TP5X, they're the only 5-layer tour balls, so they give you better distance and accuracy and control tee to green. There's the inner 3 layers. They're the Tri-Fast Core. They give you more distance. The outer 3 layers, the dual spin cover, perfect amount of spin with your wedges around the green. But don't take it from me. Take it from
Greeny, you know how to win at business?
Tell me how.
Show up early for meetings. That way everybody who's only on time looks like slackers.
Well, I got a better way to win at business.
What's that?
Instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites. You can show up with no advance reservation and redeem your La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
I feel like I'd win at business more than you.
I'd cream you at business.
Impossible. I'm undefeated at business.
Go to LQ.com now and prepare to win at business.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
All right, back with Bilas and Jay. I always hate doing that to people live on the air. I don't know if you're otherwise busy, so thank you very much for continuing the conversation here. Golic, I'll let you pick it up.
We can move on to other things. What I'll say is I agree with you. I don't think we're going to get to the point of roaming the hallways because this is so outlandish of a thing that has happened that it's so far away from the norm of a recruiting trip that I don't see any of that we were discussing. As far as going back quickly, so if we want to save time for something, and there's actually another question I want to ask you about the punishment side. As far as the McGee and the guys were given, he was the only one that people named. My answer to that is he's the only one there. I mean, they're athletes recruits deal with the recruiting coordinator. They'll see the head coach on the last day and maybe the assistant coach at some point. But for the most part, and McGee is in the dorm there with them while this is going on. So when they're asked the question, they're like, yeah, it's McGee. He's the one there. He's the one doing this. So I get why they're only saying him. We will just disagree on the fact that I think other people up the ladder may know. Does it get as far as Rick Pitino? I have no idea. Again, plausible deniability, what your program does, and they decided to punish him anyway. So that would be my reasoning for why they're all saying McGee, because McGee was the front man in all this, and that's the person they saw doing it. As far as the punishment,
can I respond to that just briefly?
Yeah, sure.
That would require a conspiracy so tight and so vast that I just don't believe it exists. I mean, you're talking about, we had. These investigations had managers interviewed and students and personnel that were outside dorm personnel. I mean, these were exhaustive investigations into this. So I think that would require a conspiracy that might be the tightest in the history of conspiracies if we're to believe that. All I'm saying is, there is not one shred of credible evidence to suggest that that is true, that there was a conspiracy that vast. And, Mike, believe me, I get it. I get the idea that we say, come on, somebody else had to know, because this is mind-boggling. It's really a very strange situation. But we've also seen in every business where people are given responsibilities and authorities and trusted to do their jobs, and they let us down. And I happen to believe that's what's at work here. And something like you guys had the Occam's razor thing before, talking about that. And so in the absence of being able to have any shred of credible evidence of this vast conspiracy, the simplest thing in an Occam's razor situation is that this was McGee. And when we say, hey, oftentimes the simplest explanation is the right one. Maybe this actually is, and I'm an evidence guy. I want to know, what's the evidence of this? And we really don't have any. And it's not like people were not in. Everybody was interviewed, and I don't think everybody at Louisville is going to lie to protect a couple other people. I just don't believe that. And so that's why I say there's no credible evidence that this went beyond Andre McGee. The NCAA doesn't have any. Louisville looked into this, and the easiest thing to do for Louisville, and some would argue the smart corporate policy would have been to just fire Rick Pitino and his staff and move on, and that would have helped them immeasurably institutionally. But they didn't have any evidence in order to do that, and so that's where I'm coming from. And then the other thing, and I apologize for interrupting you, Mike, but the other thing would be, sort of the idea that this is an extra benefits case, and when as silly as this all comes out to be, if you take out the seedy and salacious nature of this, what the NCAA would normally do in this is say, all right, what's the dollar value of all this stuff? If it's under a certain amount, the players get to pay. We wouldn't be talking about vacating wins for extra benefits at this level. It's the seedy nature of it that Louisville's going to argue, look, you're going outside your rules. We get it, it's seedy, but you're going outside the bounds of the rules in order to say how seedy you think this is. And it's really an extra benefits case.
I love Occam's.
I even laugh thinking about it.
I love Occam's razor being used. I think that's fantastic.
But once again, you know what beats Occam's razor? Golic's hammer.
I should pull out the Golic's hammer in this. But listen, we're going to disagree a bit on this, on who possibly knew this. But that's fine. We can do that. As far as punishment, in your mind, what is the best? We were trying to figure this out, going all the way back to the Reggie Bush gets in trouble, and players who never played with Reggie Bush paid the price. What in your mind is fair punishment for a school that causes the least collateral damage to the innocent?
Well, I don't think that's that hard. I mean, you punish those that are responsible, and those that are not responsible, you don't. And the idea, like, I don't have any problem with them giving money back or having monetary fines because this is pro sports. So if you want to fine the institution for certain things,
right,
that's fine. I think it's kind of silly, honestly, to be dealing with vacating of wins.
Agreed.
I don't think that's of any – it's not a deterrent. It's kind of like, and look, all these cases are different, but when we talk about how important these things are and is this an NCAA if you're not – this is an extra benefits case. I think we can all agree that what happened at Baylor in the early 2000s, where there was a murder, murder's worse than strippers. You know, I think we can all agree with that. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't an NCAA matter. Baylor was hit hard back then because of extra benefits, and the scholarship for Patrick Dennehy being paid by the basketball staff, things like that. And it's the same thing here. It's an extra benefits case. I don't think that you're going to see a deterrent of this kind of behavior with a bowl ban when you've got – this was illegal activity that people could go to jail for. Now, the grand jury came back and said, we don't have enough evidence in order to go forward with the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, in a criminal context. But that's where most of this stuff needs to be. On the extra benefits side, it's absolutely an NCAA issue. As ridiculous as it seems to count up the values of all this stuff in these quote-unquote services, that's what the rules call for. On the punishment side for the coach, I happen to think this coach accountability rule goes too far. I understand it. And I do think some people outside of the structure are using the term plausible deniability in the improper context. Like, all we have to do is be reasonable. Did the person know, or should the person reasonably have known? The fact that something happened, I don't think is enough to lay blame just at the foot of the coach. That's sort of a way for administrators to get out of having any accountability. They just say, well, it's the hippo. Let's leave it to the highest paid person. Let's just leave it with the highest paid person. The rest of us can wash our hands of it, and we get out of it. Presidents, athletic directors, chancellors, they don't have to worry about it because they just leave it at the coach. And so suspending coaches for stuff that the NCAA rules that they knew nothing about, I don't think helps in any way. But that's a policy issue. The rule is the rule, and so I have no problem with the rule being enforced and Patino getting a suspension. The way the suspension's being put into place at the start of ACC play makes no sense because the NCAA appeals committee already ruled that was improper to do to Jim Boeheim. So why they would turn around and do it again makes me question what they're thinking. But in the grand scheme of things, that's a small issue. But one last thing on the punishment side. A lot of people are, and I get it, why they're doing this, but are saying, well, boy, North Carolina better be really concerned. One of the issues that going for, like North Carolina's scandal is a lot different from Louisville's. Mm-hmm. Louisville's is an NCAA issue. That's an extra benefits case. That's an NCAA issue. North Carolina's is not. North Carolina's was an issue of academic curricula and rigor that emanated from the academic side. And although people want to make it into something else, it's not. And it was horrible what happened there, and people should be ashamed of themselves. But it's not an NCAA issue. And North Carolina, if they get hammered and the NCAA continues to go outside their rules with the North Carolina case, you're going to see that possibly in federal court, and North Carolina will win because the NCAA has gone outside of the bounds of their rules to punish for something they don't like, but not that's against the rules. This one, extra benefits are against the rules. This is absolutely an NCAA case in the Louisville matter. It's just a bizarre, seedy one, but it's absolutely an NCAA matter.
Jay, this was great. Thanks a million for doing it and taking a little extra time for us. And I'm sure we'll talk next week as the NBA draft rolls around. But this was terrific. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Hey, guys, I have to go to the driving range and do a showing to the golf gods because they absolutely exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I told you, Bilas. Bilas, you're on my side on this, right?
Stay away from the fescue.
Yeah, Mike, Mike Golic, there's another place where we're going to have to agree to disagree. You don't think they're golf gods?
No.
And you may be struck by a 1-iron in the back of the head at your next golf outing with somebody's grips that should have been regripped. And you better be careful.
He's exactly right. All right, so a good conversation we had there with Jay Bilas. I really sort of sat back because the two of you guys had differing points of view, and I really enjoyed listening, and I hope everyone else did as much as I did. My takeaway from this, primarily, and I'd let your thought on it, is what it ultimately comes down to, for me, from a reasonable standpoint, and that's the word Jay kept using, and it's a word I like, is what should we be allowed to reasonably expect coaches to know? Mm-hmm. Like he said, if the coach is walking through the players' parking lot and he sees a bunch of Mercedes and Lamborghinis, he should reasonably be expected to know bad things have happened.
Quickly, let me say, the coach shouldn't even have to walk through the parking lot.
Tell me.
Coaches have people.
Who are these people?
They are people on the staff.
But isn't Andre McGee one of those people in
Yes.
theory?
Yeah, well, Andre McGee was a recruiting guy as well. That doesn't have to be part of the coaching staff. It could be part of the administration that knows what's going on. They know. They will come to Rick and say, this guy's driving a brand new Escalade. This guy's driving a brand new Beamer.
Okay.
Coach doesn't have to physically walk through the players' parking lot and see those cars.
Fair enough.
They absolutely would know.
So that is a little bit of the answer to the question, because I do find it interesting. I do wonder sometimes, because I've never been inside of this, right? I've always just been on the outside of it. You've been inside much more than I have. It was a long time ago, but even with your sons, you're much closer to it than me now, is just how much I always hear people say, the coaches know everything. Well, what is everything? I understand them knowing the grades. I understand them knowing who's not showing up at class. I understand them knowing generally. I understand them knowing if someone gets in trouble. Mm-hmm. But do you know what's going on in a dorm room on a given night? Do you know what's going on at a party that a bunch of them go to? And if you do know, how do you know?
If something wrong happens at the party, you'll know.
So if something wrong, which was clearly happening in that dorm 22 times over 4 years, is going on, but everyone involved in it has a vested interest in not telling the coach that,
right?
Is it reasonable to then assume the coach might not have known?
I will say this again, that McGee, think of him as the recruiting coordinator. He's the foot soldier. He's the feet on the ground in the dorm.
Yeah.
This is who the recruits see. This is who they see in the dorm. So when they're asked what goes on, it was that guy. It was some of them maybe not even remember his name. It was that coach there. Oh, McGee, yeah, that one, McGee. The assistant coach knew. No, they don't see those guys in that, and they're not. The assistant coaches certainly aren't telling the recruit, "Hey, wait to see the time you have with McGee."
I get
tonight.
that, but is it reasonable?
No.
Is it reasonable to say that if McGee knew he was doing something wrong? This is basically what has been determined here. Is that McGee was acting on his own.
Yes.
The NCAA determined.
That is not reasonable to me. Not 2 years, 3 years, 4 years of this happening. It's reasonable to me that the recruits only knew of McGee in this because nobody else was involved.
Correct.
They're there for a day and a half. They leave. Some come to the school, some don't. So that's reasonable. It's not reasonable. It is not reasonable that nobody else knew. Now, you want to go to the thing, does Rick Pitino know? That's where it can get gray, because there absolutely could be coaches that have people that say, take care of it. I don't want to know. I want it to be run this way. If something bad happens, plausible deniability, let's not let it get back to me, handle the situation. You have people for that.
Here's the other part of this. There's money involved.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, as Jay said, as crazy as it sounds, from an NCAA standpoint, this turned out to be an extra benefits case. They have to assign a monetary value to these strippers.
There was a $5,000 fine with this.
Okay, fair enough. But that's not where the monetary value they have to decide is how much was it actually worth, what were the improper benefits that were given to the students. That's why they're vacating the games that they played in.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous, but that's ultimately the only reason they're connected to it. What I'm asking is, if you're saying Andre McGee did all this on his own, it cost, I have no idea how much, but to throw these parties with a variety of exotic dancers and some of them that were taking it to extra levels, these sexual services that were then provided, there's a lot of money involved in that. Where's he getting the money?
Well, I mean,
it's not reasonable to think he's taking it out of his own pocket.
Your recruiting coordinator has a budget to work with.
So but I mean, does it come in ones? You know what I mean? I mean, what
ones however you want.
I guess so.
But
that to me is another one. I mean, follow the money and see where it goes. That's an interesting question.
Certainly do that because it would seem to be.
Does he not have to account in any way? Does he have to hand in receipts when if you've got a budget?
See, that I don't know. And can you cook stuff? I don't know. Listen, I don't know that part about it.
It's all very complicated. I have a couple of details that came from the book. There's a lot more to get to here. Mike and Mike, let's take a quick break. We'll
dive into
things down, and we'll continue this discussion and more in just a moment. I lost track of my own thought there. Mike and Mike.
Huh?
Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user James said that it has some kind of clever formula in their design to look after the pits. Guess that makes Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant the smart choice then, James. Pick some up at your local retailer today.
Let me ask you a question. When we come back to this conversation, and I hope everyone was with us for the long discussion that Mike and Jay Bilas had, because it was a really good conversation. And to me, it really comes down to this. The legendary line about President Nixon was, what did the president know,
right,
and when did he know it? With regard to this, it's not that. Because there was no finding that Rick Pitino knew. What they are actually asking you in the NCAA is to determine what is reasonable to assume the coach should have known.
Right.
And that's what I'm asking you. If they found that Rick Pitino knew about this, then there's no explanation that would not result in him being fired.
Right.
None. So clearly, the university believes he didn't know,
and the NCAA
believes he didn't know.
Doesn't mean he didn't know, but they believe he didn't know.
Or at least they can't prove he knew.
Exactly.
Which is sort of the side of it that you're taking.
Sure.
And Jay was taking the other side, and I don't know who's right or wrong. What I'm saying is that's not what the finding was anyway. The finding was that it is the responsibility of the coach to know. And I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of, and I know you can't draw me a line. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what is reasonable to expect the coach to know and what is not.
If something like this happened once or twice, I could see it, certainly. And Jay said something, a soundbite we had played earlier, that I agree on. To sit there and say they have to know 100% of the things 100% of the time, I agree. That can be crazy. So in this case, if it were to happen a couple of times, if it happened a couple of times in the dorm, once or twice, strippers are there and some prostitutes with that, and then that was the end of it. But 4 years, 22 times or
That's
whatever?
What Jay said, yeah.
Whatever the number
4 years,
is,
22 times.
I'm sorry, I don't buy it that McGee was the only one who knew. We have an excerpt from Mark Schlabach, an article about this. You guys have it here. I don't know when this was written.
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Okay. Schlabach said at least 7 of the recruits who engaged in sex acts with women were under the age of 18. According to the report, and one recruit interviewed by the NCAA said a Louisville assistant told the team it had practiced poorly because, quote, y'all had strippers in there all night. The recruit told the NCAA the assistant knew about the parties because he was close with McGee, and another recruit told NCAA investigators it was common knowledge that the parties were occurring. So, again, this is from our Mark Schlabach. This was yesterday, and this is what supposedly some recruits said in the NCAA investigation. I had a few people tweet to me that in the report 3 to 4 assistants were named in this. I just don't buy that McGee was the only one who knew. I can buy that the recruits only saw McGee because as the recruiting guy, that's who you see for the most part on recruiting weekends and who you deal with the most. So when they had to think of the courtroom scene, is the man in the courtroom, who was, yes, it's him, and they point to him. That's all those guys saw involved in that activity. Mm-hmm. So that's who they named. So in my eyes, that doesn't mean he's the only one who knew. I think others knew. How high up? That I don't know. But I don't think in my mind, there is zero doubt that others above McGee knew what was going on.
That's the part of this that I find so confusing because if those are excerpts, the Mark Schlabach, he's taken that directly from the NCAA report.
Right.
So if that's in the NCAA report, how can the finding be that this guy acted alone?
I don't think it is, but the finding is that there was no proof that it got all the way to Pitino.
No, I understand that. But which assistant coach said that? Which assistant coach said, y'all are practicing badly because you all had a bunch of strippers up there last night?
Don't know.
I mean, which assistant coach said that who was close to McGee? If the players involved in this that were interviewed by the NCAA were all granted immunity, which is what Jay said happened, then do we not know who said that? Did they not tell you specifically which coach said that? I keep coming back to this, and maybe this is totally naive on my part. I totally grant you that. You're Rick Pitino, okay? He's now in the Hall of Fame. He would not have been in the Hall of Fame at the time that this was going on, but you know you're going to the Hall of Fame. You've made trillions of dollars. He made a ton of money in the NBA.
Sure.
You're a legendary coach, so you're getting players left and right. He's getting players at Louisville. You know that you are risking everything. If you're aware this is going on, again, this is my own way of thinking, and maybe it is my own cautious nature that sort of informs my opinion on this, and maybe I'm just stupid or naive or both. But I'd be thinking to myself, unless this is a practice that goes on all the time everywhere, which everyone says it does not, all of a sudden I'm going to say, I've got a great idea. Here's how I'm going to start getting players. I'm going to have my recruiting coordinator bring strippers in here and have them perform sexual acts on minors, which, if ever discovered, will destroy me forever. Not only will I get fired, but I will be remembered exclusively for this and not for anything else I ever
some other
did.
issues he may be remembered for.
Well,
as well.
Yes, but those are infidelity issues.
Right.
I'm not excusing that.
No.
But that's much more commonplace.
I'm with you.
Right? If we were to all of a sudden cast aside everyone who's been unfaithful to their spouse, it would change the tenor of the conversation. This is a whole other level from that. And so I guess what I'm saying is that am I wrong? You understand what I'm getting at? Am I wrong in that?
I completely understand what you're saying. That's why I don't know if it got all the way to the top. Let me throw the other side to you.
Go ahead.
Let's say you're correct and he didn't know. Now I'm the AD or I'm the president of Louisville, and I go to you and I say, you're the head coach of this team?
Right.
You're Rick Pitino. You're
Yes.
going to the Hall of Fame.
Correct.
For 4 years, there were 22 times strippers came into a dorm, mainly that athletes reside in, had striptease parties, and prostitutes were in there. And you didn't know? What the hell is wrong with this picture, Rick? Is that fair to ask?
Yeah, it is, I'm sure. And I'm sure his answer, as he said, is I'm not excusing it now.
Right.
But the answer is, I didn't know. I'm horrified. I'm horrified that this happened. I put my faith in this guy, Andre McGee, and he went rogue on me, and I throw myself on the mercy of the court because I recognize it happened, and I'm disgusted, and I will put in place any safeguards that I have to keep it from ever happening again. But I did not know. And
is that good enough?
I'm sorry it happened.
Is that good
obviously
enough
not for the NCAA.
For a 12 to 15-person team, not a 100-person team, for 4 years to have no idea that this is going on? And now, in reading about this, that other coaches in the report, knew what was going on? That shouldn't there be? Are you kidding?
Well, this is why. So now we've gotten to the bottom of the matter. This is why he got suspended. Right.
Yes,
That's what the NCAA penalty is. The NCAA penalty is basically Mark Emmert, who is the president of the NCAA, and the infractions committee, looking at Rick Pitino and saying, how in the hell could this have happened in your program and you not have known about it? It's not enough to just say I didn't know, which I think really is consistent with everything we're saying. Because if you did know, there's no way in hell you can continue to be the coach. Put the first paragraph you guys had up there for a second. Let me read the first sentence of that again, okay? Because it should be chilling when you read the first sentence of this again. Anyone who had knowledge of this cannot possibly be allowed to continue in this job. Just go back to that, please. You had it there for a second. It clicked away. But I want to read the first sentence of it again because I think it's significant. At least 7 of the recruits who engaged in sex acts with women were under the age of 18, according to the report. Just stop there. Anyone with knowledge of that, anyone, has to be immediately gone, right?
Yeah.
You can't continue to work at a university if that's happened. Mm-hmm. So I think immediately you say, if we think you knew, there's no way in hell you can continue to be the coach here. So now we've gotten to your level, which is plausible deniability.
Right.
He says he didn't know, and we believe him. But we are punishing him because we say it is your responsibility to know.
Should there be any part of this that says, if you didn't know this was going on, should you have a job? For 4 years, for all this happening in the dorms, Is that fair?
I'm asking. I will put that in the form of a question.
I don't know. I mean, that.
Is it a big enough violation? Is it such an overwhelmingly terrible thing that happened that even if you didn't know, you have to pay the ultimate price for it professionally?
Obviously, if you knew and didn't say anything, it's way worse. I completely get
If
that.
you knew and didn't say anything, then forget it. Then literally everything you've ever stood for is stricken from the record.
Could not agree more.
Let me read you a little more from Schleboth, same article that we're talking about. He writes, for the sake of argument, let's take Pitino at his word and assume he didn't know about the parties. McGee did not cooperate with the investigation, so we may never know his version of the events. That admission, the fact that Pitino didn't know, might be an even bigger indictment of the Hall of Fame coach. When you're being paid $5 million per year to coach basketball at a state university, you better know when something so disreputable is occurring within your program. And it's not as if strippers entertained Louisville recruits and players only once. So Schleybaugh is basically saying what you're saying. Yeah. Is it a bigger indictment not to know? In my opinion, no, it isn't.
Listen, I say no as well. If you knew that, hit it, and given the facts of this, that's way worse. I completely agree. But how far does this go? Is 5 games? Is that it? 5 games. You should have known what was going on. You did in 5 games. Or I don't know. That I don't. This comes down to an opinion thing. Now we all just have an opinion. We don't have any power in the situation to do anything. But I know there are those that will say, well, he didn't know. He can't know everything. He's not at fault. And there are all the way to the other side of how does he not know? He should be fired for not knowing what's going on under his Hall of Fame command.
I'm really trying to figure out in my own mind where I fall on that spectrum. I definitively fall on the I believe he didn't know side. I do. I believe he didn't know. But now, when something this egregious has taken place, I mean, I'm trying to think of. I mean, this could happen anywhere now. Take out of the equation that this is an extraordinarily high. United Airlines, right? They had this enormously high. Well, not bad example because there's so many employees.
I was just going to say
you can't hold the
dealing
CEO
with a team of X amount. In the teens, I think of players.
What is reasonable to assume that a coach should know and what is not? Just because this, Jay attached the right words to this. This is so seedy and so salacious that it grabs your attention more than a lot of other things. Is it reasonable to assume that if there is some sort of significant academic fraud going on, the coach should know? If someone is writing papers, if there is an academic counselor, which has happened in a million different cases.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Let me give you 2 scenarios.
Go.
There was academic fraud. Someone, a tutor wrote a paper for a player twice. Scenario 1. A recruiter wrote a paper for a bunch of players over a 4-year period 20 to 25 times. You tell me.
Are you telling me that the coach would then know that?
For that long? I mean,
maybe I'm wrong. I feel like that does happen. I mean, I'm not naming any one particular place.
In all honesty,
but I feel like that does happen.
I think that would be a lot more difficult for the coach to end up knowing than this.
Yeah.
Than this happened, without question, from the academic fraud side of it, from a tutor getting something from players to write papers, to help with homework, and then the player getting a good grade. If it's just between those two, that being kept from the coach, or being kept, maybe more importantly, from the coach's person that basically is the person that's supposed to know everything that's going on. Those kind of their own kind of things can be kept between a couple of people amongst themselves. This, what we're talking about, we're talking at least 7 recruits. How many recruits were involved in all this? We know 7 were under the age of 18. How many weren't? The amount of people is more, the time is more, and the details of it are a hell of a lot more salacious than someone writing a paper for somebody else.
Of course. That's commonplace stuff.
Yeah.
That's stuff that I think we assume happens all the time.
Right.
They're also a lot more salacious than someone slipping money to players or exchanging other quote-unquote improper benefits. Anything from a free turkey sandwich to cars and, houses for their parents and any number of different things. All of that kind of stuff, I think we all assume, all of us who've been around college sports for any period of time, assume is happening in a lot of places.
Right.
And every once in a while they get caught and they pay the piper.
There is no doubt you can get away with some things. You can get away with some things without the coach finding out. It's just a matter of how many times, how long, how many people know are involved. Yeah. So like Jay said, and I agree, 100%, knowledge 100% of the time is unfair for a coach to know. But a high percentage of the times, especially if things are going on for a while, depending on what they are, a coach or that coach's person, you would think would know something.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, business, or recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. One thing Schleybar wrote in there is, we may never hear Andre McGee's side of the story. Andre McGee has fallen off the face of the earth.
Yes, he has.
He was an assistant coach someplace else. He left that job when all of this broke. And now, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the world has not heard from him. Pitino, who's been on our show many times, says he has reached out to Andre McGee to try and talk to him about what happened, and McGee does not respond. So the one part of this I'll say is, in the world in which we live, everyone eventually tells their story.
Yeah.
Right? Andre McGee will eventually tell his story. There are any number of reasons, and we can do that very dangerous thing,
sure,
like assume. We all know what happens when you assume.
Yes.
But what would be the reasons why he's not telling his story? One, he's holding out hope of getting back into the business someday.
Right.
That ship has probably sailed. Two, are people making it interesting, making it worth his while?
People making it worth his while to be quiet.
To keep his story quiet.
Yeah.
These stories eventually get told, right? They wind up on Oprah or on, well, that's a very dated example.
Sure is.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They wind up somewhere,
yeah.
right? You will wind up sitting there opposite Robin Roberts or opposite Jeremy Schaap or Bob Lee or someone like that, or us, and will eventually tell their story of what actually happened. And that's really when you're going to get to the bottom of this.
Right.
Then because is it reasonable to assume that Andre McGee could have done all of this completely on his own with no one else knowing?
To me, no.
Me neither.
To me, it's not
That's
reasonable.
very hard to pick. The more I've thought about it,
yeah.
and the more the conversation I've listened to.
It's way more likely that Pitino, it didn't get to rise all the way to him than McGee doing this by himself.
Right. I've said again, I will not change this. I believe Pitino did not know. I just do. Call me a sap if you want to. But it is hard to picture, especially for the amount of money. Can you put the money back up there again, guys? You had a quote in there that involved the specific amount of money that it was reported, what Katina Powell said was involved in this.
$10,000?
$10,000 was the total over the entirety of 4 years?
Yes.
That isn't that much money. I would have thought it would be a little bit more than that. But even $10,000 to a relatively low-level assistant. Here it is. Katina Powell, a self-described former escort, alleged in her book that Andre McGee paid her $10,000 for 22 shows at the Dorm from 2010 to 2014. According to the NCAA Infractions Committee report, 15 recruits and 3 players attended the parties. So even $10,000 over the course of 4 to 5 years, which isn't as much money as I might have guessed. But even that, is that coming from his pocket? Is it coming from a recruiting budget? If it's coming from a recruiting budget, is there no record keeping of where that money is going?
Where else can you get the money from?
Yeah.
Other parts? I don't know.
Is someone financing that from the outside?
Yeah.
These are all questions that obviously the NCAA got to the bottom of, and we'll see.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
A friend of mine is destroying me in my email. Chris Carrera, a friend of mine, is basically telling me that I'm making a fool of myself by even opening myself to the possibility that something like this could have been happening and the head coach wouldn't know. By me saying on the air, which I stand by, I believe Pitino when he says he didn't know. But my friend is a smart guy whose opinion I do respect, says there's no way in the world in which we live, that a person and an authority figure in a position like that, with all that is at stake, that something of that magnitude could be going on without his knowledge.
Listen,
that is a perspective.
I can't sit here and point a finger and say he absolutely knew, but it would not shock me at all if he knew. But I also understand the way of keeping it from the top man, the head coach, so they don't know that. But see, then what it gets down to is what system is your head coach playing under? You know, what have you told what kind of program do you run? He's been there long enough to kind of, if all of a sudden you're hired as an assistant coach with Rick Pitino, you're going to kind of learn what kind of program he has, right?
Sure.
And that's the job of the head. This is how my ship runs through the water, okay? So if his ship says nothing illegal ever goes on, and you get a rogue guy that does something illegal, okay. But now if we hear other coaches knew about it, as Mark Schlabach's article says, then who all knows about it? Then does it get back to Rick? Do they keep hiding it from him because they know he doesn't want to play the game that way? So then is he responsible for that? Or does he, in fact, know about it and just kind of says, they're doing their thing and we're just going to keep on going? I can't sit here and definitively say he knew, but what I will say, it won't surprise me. It would not surprise me. And the other side of it is, if there's people out there that don't think he knew, how responsible should he then be for this lasting for so long under his watch?
Let me read you a couple of tweets on this, and then we'll move on to some other things here. We've been on this a long time. Amanda tweets at us, he sets the culture and values for his organization. His staff should have known this was unacceptable. If they didn't, that's also his fault.
Well, see, again, I mean, it's you get a rogue guy. As I said, you get a rogue assistant coach or somebody who does something that's against what the head coach wants. I could see at times you can't blame the head coach for that. You get it going on for 4 years and 22 times in a dominated by athletes' dorm on recruiting trips with recruits who are minors. Sorry, different story. You know what I'm saying? I mean, is that unreasonable to think? It's
certainly not unreasonable to think. I mean, that's the point. That's why they were punished. Make it clear for anyone who's just not been following the details of this closely. You have a life. You have other things to worry about. They did not find that he knew. They found that he should have.
Right.
That's what the NCAA hit them for.
Yes.
And hit him for. They found something like this happening should not be able to happen in your program without you knowing about it.
Right.
That's what they found.
Right.
Because I'll repeat myself. If anyone were to find that he knew about it, there's no way he keeps his job.
Agreed.
Wilson tweets, Golic touched on it. You have 12 to 15 guys you're responsible for. That's it. 12 to 15. You need to know what color underwear they have on. As
I said, fair to a point. 100%. All-knowing 100% of the time, that's unfair to say. A high percentage of the time, because as I'll say again, it's not the head coach walking through the dorms. It's not the head coach walking to where players park their cars and looking. They have people that do that and report to them. I certainly know of that in the football sense when you're dealing with a lot more guys to know what guys are doing. Are they going to know if somebody jaywalks? Probably not, unless there's a ticket, bad example. But, of a minor thing, of a one-time thing, maybe, depending, probably not. But again, we're talking about something over a number of years as salacious as this. It doesn't seem possible.
Kyle tweeted at us, it's called culpable ignorance when you didn't know but should have. So it's a good term.
Yeah.
Culpable ignorance. You were ignorant to this, but you should have known about it. Our friend Booger McFarland is clearly listening to the conversation because he's been tweeting along a little bit, and he tweeted, impossible for coaches to know everything kids do. Some of you don't know everything your kids do, but now the coach is supposed to know, with a question mark.
As I just said, yes, I agree. Booger, I agree. 100% knowledge 100% of the time. But if your kid was doing something for 4 years and you didn't know about it, I think people would look at you as a parent, wouldn't they? Wait, your kid was doing this for 4 years? 22 times over a 4-year period, and it cost this amount of money that he was getting from somewhere, and you didn't know about it? Oh, what kind of parent are you? You don't think that would be asked of you, Booger? It would absolutely be asked of you. So what do you say in that case? I mean, boy, my kid really pulled the wool over my eyes. I wasn't aware enough as a parent. Where's the certainly the blame is with the kid, if he's 17, 18 years old. I'm not saying a 4-year-old, with what they're doing. But I would ask you, Booger, it's one thing if they do it one time. 4 years, that many times, you didn't know? You didn't have an inkling? Somebody didn't know? Find it hard to believe. Whether it's a head coach or other people, I just find it way hard to believe.
That's what the NCAA found, though. I mean, that's what it is. The NCAA found you're a bad parent. You should have known this.
They found that, but I'm not sure that's it. I'm not sure how many coaches knew. Did Pitino know? I know that's what they got, and that's what you're going to live with, and they're trying to appeal it. It's not going to get worse unless Andrew McGee all of a sudden wants to do a tell-all, or somebody who knew more about this comes out and starts to say more. It's not going to get any worse. They're going to appeal. They're either going to win their appeal and things will be lessened, or they'll lose their appeal and whatever they got hit with, that's going to be the fallout. And that's going to be the end of it then. Until somebody like McGee or anybody else that was involved in this comes out and tells us more.
So I read you Booger's tweet, and someone wrote back to him, it isn't about knowing what happens in form. A member of his coaching staff set it up and paid for it. That's his responsibility. And Booger wrote back to that tweeter, he is responsible, no doubt. But to say he knew and sanctioned it is totally different.
No, it's absolutely different. Absolutely different. Yes, 100% agree with that.
All right, so we'll leave that there for the moment. It's a good conversation. We talked about it for quite a while here, and I'm sure it's not going away. They're going to appeal, and maybe more things will come out, and you touched on it. Andre McGee will not remain silent forever.
No, we will not.
At some point, Andre McGee will tell his side of the story. Okay, we got a big fight coming up. 2 months and change. We got McGregor. We got Mayweather. We talked about it much of the morning yesterday, and so did pretty much everyone here at ESPN. And there were a lot of really interesting perspectives taken in any number of different directions. We found 2 of them in particular we really wanted you to hear. You want Le Batard first or Kellerman?
It's a fight. Max is a fight guy. Let's hear what Max has.
Let's give Max. Max, by the way, is in Vegas right now because HBO has a big fight this weekend. But Max, whom you all know now from First Take
right,
with Stephen A. and company, and is a boxing guy through and through. And this was his analysis of what he expects to happen and not to happen in the fight.
I can tell you how the fight will go. Floyd will dance on him early. He will give everyone a show. If McGregor doesn't tackle him and take him to the mat and then security jumps in, Floyd will knock him out as he pleases. The reason Floyd doesn't score as many knockouts as others do, or as some other top fighters do, is because he's not a huge puncher and he's facing other experienced boxers. When people say, well, McGregor has a good chin, you know who has a good chin? People who don't get hit on the chin. Floyd will be able to hit McGregor whenever and wherever he pleases. McGregor will not be able to touch Floyd.
He went on to say he does not believe that McGregor will land a single punch.
I think that's ridiculous. I mean, McGregor he's not a pro boxer, I get it, but boxing is part of what he does, and he did box before that. To say he won't land a punch, I disagree with. I think he'll land a punch.
Well, here's the thing I'd say. If you took, I don't know, here's what I don't know. I don't know how good a boxer Conor McGregor is or isn't. He's probably a better boxer than I am a tennis player. So pick the men's A singles champion at your country club, all right? Someone who is a good tennis player, right? If that guy played Roger Federer in tennis and Roger Federer didn't want him to win a single point,
he wouldn't let him win a point. Right.
He wouldn't win a point. So is McGregor as a boxer closer to Floyd than that guy is to Federer?
I could see McGregor not winning a round, but I can see him landing a punch.
Oh, in fact, I would say it would be stunning if McGregor won a round.
Agreed. Because we sit there and watch all the highlights of McGregor punching people in the octagon and people going down. Okay, we know boxing is part of it, and he's punching other people who are MMA fighters, not boxers. So listen, we both agree. Mayweather is going to win this thing. I'm starting to lean more toward he's going to, even though he's not a knockout guy, that he is going to knock him out because I think McGregor is going to get tired, and I think McGregor is going to leave himself exposed at times, and Mayweather will take advantage of that.
I would say this, too, that if the number 1 seeded male singles player in the NCAA, I don't even know who that is, but whoever the best college tennis player in America is right now played Federer, he would win a point.
Yeah.
He would win several points. Federer would easily beat him,
but he would
win a few points.
Agreed.
And so is McGregor that as a boxer? I don't know. I mean, he's not a professional boxer, so we really have no idea how good a boxer he is.
I think McGregor lands some punches. I think McGregor doesn't win a round, and I think McGregor gets knocked out. So, I mean,
basically, what Max just told you is more comparable to when I was a kid growing up. We had a country club, and the men's A single champion was a man named Al Zuckerman. When I was growing up, my perception of life was the two best tennis players in the world were Jimmy Connors and Al Zuckerman. He was that man who was a tennis player at our club, and he was the best player there, right? If Al Zuckerman played Jimmy Connors, he would not have won a single point.
Right.
Is Conor McGregor closer to the best tennis player in the NCAA right now, whoever the number one college tennis player is in America right now, or is he closer to Al Zuckerman? Which one is Conor McGregor as a boxer?
I'm not calling Conor McGregor Al Zuckerman.
I feel like...
Just not doing it.
Okay, I feel like, and Mr. Zuckerman, you know how much I always loved you growing up. I hope you're listening. But the point of it is
now using you as the before person, though.
No, I mean, well, whatever. He was a friend of my parents. Either way, that's not the point. Here is the point. The point is that I feel like Max is saying, when he's saying he's not going to land a punch, that that Floyd will hit him at will. Well, literally, anytime he wants to punch him, will do so. I feel like Max is saying Conor McGregor is Al Zuckerman.
Well, I completely agree with that. I don't agree with that assessment. To actually say that Conor McGregor won't land a punch, if Max was serious, I completely disagree with that.
I think he was serious.
I
didn't see that part of the discussion, but our staff sent it out like it was serious.
I think it will be a dominating fight ending in a knockout, but to say that Conor McGregor won't land one punch, that I don't agree with.
I'm going to find a picture of Al Zuckerman, and I'm going to tweet it alongside a picture of Conor McGregor.
Wooden racket?
That's what has happened. Oh, yeah, that was back in the day, the Don A.
There you go.
The Don A. That was the racket that Borg played with.
Okay, I'm supposed to know that. I know he played with a wood racket.
It was a well-known racket.
Don A.
Well, that was a
it was
brand.
well-known for those of you in a country club.
No, tennis players, people who play tennis. That would be like saying a Titleist now. I mean, it was a brand.
No idea.
Okay. It was before Head. It was before Head came out with the big oversized racket. That was the first one.
All right.
The point of it is, what we're ultimately telling you
Don
here.
A sounds like a piece of clothing you wear. He donned a Don A.
He did. He perhaps did. But that was the racket Borg played with. Either way, the point I'm trying to make here is that Conor McGregor is to Floyd Mayweather as Al Zuckerman is to Roger Federer.
Al Zuckerman getting a lot of love.
Next, you will hear... Let me remind you what we have coming up this weekend on ESPN Radio. Tomorrow night, Astros Red Sox coverage starts 7 Eastern. That's Forward Thinking, brought to you by the GNC Summer Savings Event. Right now, you can buy more and save more on your favorite sports performance brand at GNC. Top Shelf, no, that's not the one I was looking for. I'm sorry. What was the tweet? Here it is. I'm sorry. I seem to have lost the tweet. Of the people who are saying we're not giving McGregor enough credit. Here's what I don't know, okay? McGregor competes in a combat sport.
Yes, he does.
But it isn't boxing.
No, it's not.
So is that as different as saying Usain Bolt is an incredible athlete and the greatest sprinter of all time, but if you put him in a pool against Michael Phelps, he would have no chance?
Right.
Is this like that? There's obviously so much more similarity,
or
it feels
is it
like.
making Usain Bolt run the mile?
Okay, right. Because Usain Bolt, while he wouldn't be the best miler in the world, would probably still be awfully fast.
He'll still be pretty good.
I mean, he would still, right. Which is it closer to? What do you think? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, see, I'd say in general it could be like that, but now you're asking Usain Bolt to swim against Michael Phelps. You're asking Conor McGregor to. It'd be one thing if Conor McGregor went in and fought a guy. You know what I mean? Not Money Mayweather.
Right.
I mean,
who is 40 years old?
I get that, but it's not a guy. So, which would be a lot closer if it were just a guy. So that skews the argument just a little bit.
Okay. So we played that one for you. Let's play the other one that we wanted to play for you here, and that's Dan Le Batard, who usually is all in on stuff like this. Mm-hmm. I am stunned. We had Stugotz on yesterday, and Stugotz loves this thing. And I usually take Le Batard as a guy who loves anything that's crazy and circus-like, right? Anyone who listens to Dan's radio show, which follows us every single day here coast to coast, Dan likes anarchy, right? He likes things that are off the wall and crazy and outside the box and all that. So I would have expected him to be all in on Mayweather-McGregor. Well, Dan Le Batard is quite the opposite of that.
This is sucker's paradise. We're already hyping this fight for free. All over ESPN and everywhere else. And This is the American consumer and sports fan at his most suckerific. I mean, congratulations. You're a fool if you buy into this fight. A fool. Intergalactically stupid to give Conor McGregor your money for this and Floyd Mayweather your money for this.
I'm giving it to him, man. I'm telling you.
I know. A lot of you will. I don't blame you. You want to be a part of the spectacle, and the beauty of fighting is puncher's chance.
I don't want to miss if Conor McGregor actually connects and knocks Mayweather out. I don't want to miss it.
But here's what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is if you made me bet right now, and these were my only two choices, Conor McGregor wins or Max Kellerman is right and Conor McGregor doesn't land a punch all fight. I'm betting won't land a punch all fight.
So
that's what I would bet. And then you're going to watch that, and you're going to have paid for it, and you're going to be miserable about the fact. You're going to complain afterward that you paid for it.
No, I won't complain because I'm not in it for just the fight itself. So I won't. But I get what Dan's saying, and because everybody's going to buy it. Let me ask you this. If they put this game on pay-per-view a couple years ago.
Oh, sorry.
If they put this event on pay-per-view, how many people do you think would buy it? Alabama against the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, yeah. I'd buy it right now.
Kentucky against the 76ers from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone would buy it.
Mike, if Kentucky this year, not Kentucky's a bad example because they were.
I'm saying of a couple of years ago, when they were undefeated for so long, again, when the 76ers
if they played
were
this
tanking
year's
everything,
Nets, they'd win.
Okay, but I'm going when the 76ers, you didn't know the name of the people on the court.
Sure.
They were ungodly tanking. The very worst, when they're almost setting records for losses.
I'd buy it right now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You'd get tons of people to buy just for the what if. Because so many people think it'd be closer, like Alabama and Cleveland. The Browns would destroy Alabama. I would sit there and yell that from the top of the shop, but I'd still buy it. You just kind of watch for the what if. You just for the intrigue, the curiosity.
I would buy on pay-per-view a battle royale between the cast of Modern Family and the cast of the Goldbergs. I mean, I like this stuff. So to Dan and all of those who are browbeating us for being interested in this as though we're suckers, I don't get how you don't get that we don't feel that way. I know it's not a fight.
Yeah.
I'm not buying this because I think it's a fight. I'm buying it because I think it's going to be an entertaining spectacle. If, and I think this is a very real possibility, Mayweather says, you know what, I'm going to destroy this guy immediately, and does so, I will still feel like I got my money's worth. I'm interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
And if it lasts a few rounds, whatever happens, I'm good with. There's almost no outcome I can think of.
Agree. Me too.
That I will not be satisfied with.
Me too, because I'm not going in with the fight as my main focus of it. I'm going with all the surrounding things of it. And I know the weigh-in is separate. The weigh-in is free. That's not pay-per-view. I get all that. But I'm in it for the show. Absolutely, positively in it for the show.
We'll finish it by saying Facebook is really an amazing thing. Yeah. The staff found Al Zuckerman. Mr. Zuckerman, who was the best tennis player in my youth.
Wow.
Where I grew up. And there's a picture of him on our screen right now. That's Al Zuckerman.
That's a great job.
Yep.
Al. Wow.
He was a fabulous tennis player. Let me tell you, 1977, I thought he was as good as Jimmy Connors. I swear to God I did. I was wrong, but I thought so.
Facebook unreal.
It really is. We found him. Have a great day, Mr. Zuckerman. See you Monday, Mike and Mike.